So then the guy came out to take my spot that I was covering for him, and I was like, I was like ugly crying. Like, it was bad. I was just like, I couldn't get the words out.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast.
Our guest this week had a tough decision to make when her parents, who she worked for on the family farm, decided to retire and sell the cows because of their particular circumstances. It came up unexpectedly, and it was not easy for her. But Ashton Beanblossom made a big decision to stay with farming and to stay with dairying, but to go from cows to goats. So she explains how that's working for her so far, her fears as she tries to get into it, not just figuring out how to do goat dairying, but also how to manage family and how this fits into her personal life. Lots of great stuff, and we had a lot of fun talking, a lot of jokes and laughs along the way, so you'll enjoy this conversation for sure. We want to thank our sponsors, Washington Dairy Farmers of Washington. wadairy.org is their website, and you can check out a virtual dairy farm tour there if you'd like to check it out. wadairy.org. Also, Mana Insurance Group. Check them out and thank them for sponsoring the podcast as well. They're all about planning ahead, not just picking up the pieces when things go wrong, like a lot of people think about insurance for, but they're about also planning ahead and planning for success and protecting your financial future, whether it's for your family or even your farm. They insure farms as well. Also, Williams, powering your clean energy future. They support the podcast with a community grant. And let's not forget about Washington Red Raspberries as well, supporting the podcast. We thank them for their vote of confidence. And it's kind of cool for me, too, since I grew up on a red raspberry farm, to have them supporting what we do here, finding the real stories and sharing the real stories of the people behind our food here in Washington State. Again, our guest is Ashton Beanblossom. I'm Dylan Honcoop. This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. And now we go to Custer, Washington, where we talk with Ashton. You are starting goat dairy, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Like, is that what you call it?
I guess, yeah. Goat dairy, yep.
So explain how this works.
It's like a dairy farm, but you're milking goats instead of cows. It's just a goat dairy, yeah.
Okay.
It just seems... And when I'm talking in like my vlog about when we were dairied, and then I'm like, well, cow dairied. Now we're goat dairying, but not quite yet because we haven't started. So I don't know, I gotta get my terms all right. I'm all over the board of where I'm supposed to be.
So the specific goats that you need for that?
They do have specific dairy goat breeds. So we have, there are it's kind of like beef cows and dairy cows. Like they have certain goats that are bred for meat, and they're just like a beef cow. They're like chunky and stout, and they totally are a different type of goat. And then there are the dairy that are like leaner, and same like with the cows. Like dairy cows are like lean, and some people are like, oh, they're underweight, but no, it's just the way their frame is built, right? So
you have goats already, or
you really have to pry this all out of me.
Yeah, how's the whole thing working? Like, tell me the story.
Yeah, so as you guys all, I don't know who's all watching this, but or listening. We sold our dairy herd in January of 2020, and I'm the fourth generation, so I was the herdsman on that farm, and so I was just kind of thinking, like, what are we going to do next? And I was joking. And actually, it started with the joke with one of our milkers. And I was like, oh, we're just going to milk goats, like, with just downsides, And it was just a big joke. Like, it was kind of like, okay, we're just going to milk goats. And everyone thought I was crazy. And I thought I was crazy, too, actually. I was like, oh, yeah, haha, but then, actually, I, looked into it. I don't even know really why I started looking into it, because I'm not even sure what made me take it seriously. But I did, and it's actually a legitimate up and coming. There's quite a few in the Midwest. On the East Coast, there's quite a few. We went and visited last March. We went to Oregon, and we visited a goat dairy there that has a rotary and everything. They have a 60 goat rotary, and they
rotary milking parlor.
Yeah, they load them up,
One of those
and
huge things where they all like cows, but
I guess not as big as the ones for cows.
I mean, it's still big, but it's like, but the little stalls are all goat sized, and they just and the goats were like fighting to get on there and they said sometimes they jump over the divider to like go ride again.
They just love it.
They love it. Yeah. Is that funny? So
a very slow merry-go-round
for goats
where they get milk during the ride.
They get some grain too, right? So they're like, but they said if they ride again, they don't get another portion of grain. So they only get, that one's just for fun.
Well, goat milk is becoming more of a thing, right? Which is why more people are getting into it. What's the deal with goat milk? What do you do with it? All the same things that you do with cow milk?
Yeah, you can make yogurt, cheese. I don't know. I've never seen a goat ice cream, but I'm sure you could. I don't know.
Maybe you have to get into that.
Yep.
Goat ice cream, goat yogurt, goat cottage cheese, goat, you name it.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's a dairy product. You could probably, it has a different consistency a little bit. It's naturally homogenized, so it doesn't separate as quickly as like cow's milk will, with cream rising to the top.
Yeah.
So the
is
proteins
that because of
are different.
What's the profile? Proteins, fats, things like that.
Yeah, so that's
people
the
get
sciencey
into.
stuff again. You know, getting into those hard questions. So actually, there's something about goat milk, and now I'm like, I kind of know it, I kind of understand it, but it's easier for people to digest. So people who are lactose intolerant, some people, not everybody, but people can have goat milk if they can't drink cow's milk, because the proteins are easier to digest for people because it's closer to like human proteins, I guess. So, so I took it. I just kind of have been researching, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, and I actually have been like kind of obsessively researching goat dairies for the last year. Like, and I almost,
even though it was all just based on a joke.
Well, at first it was a joke. Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, it was like, I don't even know how, I don't remember what I was like. I don't remember what like made me like start research. I don't even know what did I Google goat dairy? I'm not even sure. I'm not sure what happened, but
how all great ideas start. Oh wait, Google is not paying us to say this. I promise.
I was on Yahoo or what?
Bing.
Ask Jeeves.
Does that still exist?
I don't know. We should Google it. But yeah, so that's what, I don't know what, I don't remember what, and I'm not even sure how I got, I think Facebook. I was just like on Facebook, like looking up like what legit is out there with this, right? And there are people who are just like, like a homestead type thing that they have like 5 goats or whatever, and they're milking it for them, their own personal use. Yeah. And then there are that like, there's quite a bit of technology out there. And actually in Australia and New Zealand and in Europe, it's pretty popular to have goat milk. And actually, goat's milk is the #1 consumed milk in the world. But if you think about it, it's probably mostly in countries where like cows aren't really sustainable, right? Like the goats are more forage animals. So like if you don't have like big green fields of grass for cows, goats, they like shrubs.
Because they're browsers, not grazers.
Yeah,
right?
They can graze. I mean, we're going to be grazing them. On some fields and stuff, and they can. It's not that they can't, but they would prefer like eating trees. So
is there a little bit of a sustainability vibe that you're interested in with all of that?
Yeah, that wasn't the main thing. I think it was more. I mean, I guess it kind of was that something that was more sustainable for me to do, like because I saw so much of my parents and their farm. They got so burned out with trying to do everything, right? And trying to do, they did the manure, they did the harvesting, they did everything except for like they had employees who did a lot of the daily stuff on the farm, like the milking and feeding and that. But I kind of wanted something that was a little bit, I would say, slower pace, but at the same time, looking into it now, it's, there's still, it's just like different, right? It's like, right. So I will be milking them and I'll be feeding them. And so it's like, so I'm not even sure. Where were we going with this, right? Like, where were we? The sustainability, something that I could do like with my kids, like out there with me. It's a little bit safer than having them out there with, big cows and stuff. Even cows are gentle, most of them. It's just something a little bit more doable for me to do.
And you're set up pretty well because you have this farm that was a cow dairy farm, and now it's how much do you have to like change the actual farm?
So right now we're doing, we did take all the parlor out because it was just too big. But most of it is we're trying to just do like temporary fencing and stuff because I'm not exactly sure how the flow of this all is going to go, because like they're so different than cows. They're like very social. So they're like running up to you and you go in there and it's like you can't get away with it. Like just walking through there and then just like look over at you. It's like they're like jumping on you.
That's how cows are, right? They're like,
oh
yeah. They may mosey on over and be like, what are you doing?
There's some that are
here?
friendlier than others, but mostly they just like kind of just ignored you. I mean, and you had to like herd them into, if you wanted them to go in to get milked, you just, you don't chase them, but you like stand behind them. But like goats, it's almost like you have to lead them. They almost just follow you like wherever you go. So, but I guess this all started when we were talking about why we even took it serious. Did I finish that thought?
I don't know. I don't know. But where did it go from being a joke to being like, I'm actually going to look into this?
Yeah. So, and then I messaged on Facebook David Lukens at Grace Harbor, and I was just like, hey, you guys process goat milk. What is the deal? Like, is there a market for it? And so I was looking into like different markets, like cheese or, fluid milk or whatever. And, and he said, actually, we kind of have a little bit of a need we have a farm that we get our goat milk from, but they are limited to how much they can grow because they're on like 4 acres and their barn only holds, so many goats and stuff. So they said, he's like, you can come alongside them and you can produce, what we need extra, like what we have to fill still, right? So I was like, okay, and that was about 50 goats. So I was like, okay, that's a good pace, right? 50 goats to get started and kind of see what the market is and see if I enjoy it. It's kind of become its own little beast, right? Kind of where it's like, okay, we'll try it out. And I kind of said it and people like kind of stopped and like, wait, what? You're doing what?
Like for real?
Yeah. And so then
you mean this isn't a joke anymore?
Yeah. I'm not sure where, some people might still think I'm joking right now. If you're out there, I seriously am going to milk a goat or maybe 50. But so then I was like, okay, great. We're going to do it, and then we were kind of in that weird kind of small scale, but like wanted to do it efficiently. And so I was like researching. And so there was like small scale and then there was like super large scale. So I'm like in this weird in between ground where I was like, So I was like, okay, so, it would be nice if there was a little bit more of a market. Right. And then about a couple of months ago, it was like right after that. And I was like praying. I'm like, okay, so if this is the direction I want to be in, like, I almost need just a little bit more of like a clear path, like a clear sign that's like, I'm kind of like, I need to get hit over the head a little bit with, like it's the direction, right? So actually it was like within 24 hours, I got contacted by David Lukens and he said, hey, that farm in Ferndale that we get all of our milk from, they actually want to retire and they want to move. And so I was like, it was like within 24 hours. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Wow. And I was like, oh my goodness. And like, my son was like, what? And I'm like, oh my goodness. So he's like, what? It's like, they want to sell. And he's like, who? Why?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, oh, but I was just like, that was exactly what I kind of needed to know. Okay, there's a little bit of a future to expand, not that we're going to be doing it right away. We will be milking about 50 goats this year. So they were milking about 70 and they're going to take some with them. Their favorites and their prized animals are going to go with them. So so we're going to be buying everybody else. So, and then,
Well, that's a great way to get started because they can tell you kind of what they know already about how things work. They already have some animals. They the animals are a known quantity. They're, how they behave, how they produce, that kind of stuff. And then you have a market sort of built in.
Yeah. Yep. So
with
then
David, we need to get David Lukens on the podcast too.
Yeah, you should. You should. He's very interesting. So he's a very nice guy. So he is just like 2 miles down the road too. So it's like super convenient. So I look forward to working with them. So it just kind of all. I'm not even sure what. I think it was. I messaged David and he was like, "Yeah, we kind of need this." And so I was like, "Oh, and I'm not even really." This year seems like it's lasted like 7 years. I'm like, I can't believe that was only a year ago, right? That I'm like, we visited a goat. dairy in March of last year.
So that would have been right before the shutdown.
Yeah, it was. Like, we went to go to Arizona to go visit my grandparents, and then we drove back, and we drove back so that we could stop in on that farm. And so we did, and it was like, this is like super cool. Like, it was so fun. And my kid, like, we were only there for like an hour, and I was just like, it lit a fire, right? I was like, this is so cool. And so then and there's so many different ways you can have a goat dairy. Like, it's just same with like cow dairies. That's kind of where I'm kind of stuck right now, actually, is because there's so many different ways you could manage it. And then like, so with the cow dairy, it was like little changes happened over time, right? Like they had done things a certain way, and then just kind of keep doing it. And then like, okay, so then like the pedometer system came in, right? And then they like changed that a little bit, right? But when you're starting something from scratch and there's so many different options,
all those decisions
and you
at
don't
once.
know, and you don't know how these goats are going to react, and you're not sure. And then you got to kind of remember that they're not cows, right? Because it's like the same process that it goes through, but they're not cows. So you're kind of like, okay. So
you have to untrain some of the cow things that you know.
Totally, yeah.
Be like, yeah, this is a goat. Not only is it smaller, but it's gonna do different things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So like the part, like we're designing the parlor, and we have it all figured. Well, we have it somewhat figured out, but it's like we are having some of these panels removable because I'm like, I'm not sure if that's gonna work, but we're gonna give it a try, and we're not gonna like weld it in or anything, so that like we don't have to come and dismantle what we just did, right? Because like they're
you aren't putting in a big rotary parlor for these
not
goats.
Yet, I don't know.
But they love the merry-go-round.
They do. They love it. Yeah, we can.
It's
maybe
way
just
more
get one
boring to them
ones.
to just stand there in the normal milking stall.
Well, and actually the other day, I was looking on our cameras, and I was looking, because I'm watching these beef, and I'm trying to figure out these beef we have some beef that are supposed to be calving anytime. So I've been watching them on the camera, like whenever I'm not here. And so all of a sudden I look in the parlor, it was like full of goats. And I was like, oh my goodness, the goats are.
They were just checking it out.
They were like jumping from one side to the other. Like, I was like, oh no. And then I kind of was like watching them, and I'm like, we're going to need to put a fence there. Because they had slid the door open. I'm like, look, they're so excited to get milked. They're busting into the parlor.
So how many goats do you have already? Like, do you have all 50 of those goats, or?
No, so we have 26 goats right now, and actually we have a couple meat goats. So they're not meant for milking. Mm-hmm. They actually, if you ever watch the videos, they have the horns. Everyone's like, "What? Those ones have horns? Are they boys?" And I'm like, "No,
must be boys.
They must be boys." Yeah. Actually, our boys don't have horns either. So, but they. Yeah, so we have 26 right now, and they are either going to be having their babies in May or June, or they're hopefully just got bred. So there's a couple that they had at the farm that were not bred. And so they're like, here, you can have these, and so goats are seasonal breeders. So they actually only breed, most likely. I mean, it's possible that they breed out of season, but they're like deer. So they breed in August through like end of January. And so I got these like in end of February. It's like maybe even early March. And so I was like, I don't know if they'll really do anything. But
so what does that mean then for milk production?
So so for milk production, it's different. Like cows come and heat every 21 days throughout the year. So you can have half a group of cows, well, actually at the farm, we had them all year round calving. Yeah. And so, goats, you have to really manage it a lot differently because you're only breeding during pretty much half the year. And then based on when you breed them, they're pregnant for 5 months, and so then after that 5 months they're going to kid, and then they're in milk production, right? So then I don't know, I'm not there's a lot of different ways you can be doing this too, right? The managing of that.
It is a lot funner that it's kidding, not calving too.
No kidding.
No.
Oh, we want to be kidding. Okay. Yeah. No.
So many jokes.
So many. I love a good joke. But actually one of the guys that came to install he came to look to install the parlor. He's like, he went out there and I guess this is what they said, that he said, "You've got to be kidding me." And no kidding, but we totally. Wow. But that's so it's totally different. Well, that's why I keep saying like, oh, they're going to calve. And like,
no, they're going to kid.
They're going to kid. Yeah. And then, so there's just different terms of like, I'm like, oh, that's a heifer, goat heifer.
No, not.
No.
So talk about your family history. You said you're fourth generation
I'm
on this
fourth
farm?
generation.
So go way back to the beginning. What are the roots of your family?
I know. I really need to nail this down because I think you've asked me before, and I think I said some things, and then my grandpa was like, "Oh, no."
Well, you don't have to get all the details right, but that would be your great grandpa.
Yeah,
then
he
started this farm.
Yeah, and so he actually started farming in Alaska. Because I think it was cheaper and I think it was easier to get into. And then he came down here, and then he actually started farming. There's a barn. If you're on the podcast, you can't see me pointing.
Yeah.
North of us, there's a farm.
Yeah.
And he started there. And then he bought this farm from, he didn't build this farm, but he bought it, and then they expanded off of it. And
any idea what year that would have been? Like,
I know.
20s, teens? What had to be a long time ago?
Yeah, I know. I wish I knew. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
I failed the test. My grandpa's going to be so ashamed. Well, that was... Sorry, Grandpa. But I think... I don't want to say a year because I'm not...
Yeah.
I'm just not sure of when it was. And I'm really bad with dates. So, yeah. Everybody that knows me would be like... It was my mother-in-law's 60th birthday this year. I'm like, you're 60? And she's like, yeah. What did you? I was like, yay! I had no idea. So happy birthday. I was like, man, we should have made a bigger deal of that's a big deal. And she's like, I know. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so bad at dates. So it's just so bad. Apologize. But yeah, so dates are not my thing. Numbers are really.
Well, I won't pin you down then on the dates. Yeah. But so obviously great grandpa, then your grandpa continued it.
Yep.
Then your dad.
Yeah, and my dad was one of three boys, and so two of the boys farmed, and then my uncle is a CPA, and so and then my dad had four girls, so it was like, okay, he grew up in a family of boys, and then it's like, okay, four girls. And so, if you want to talk about women's rights, he was like, okay, you can do anything, come on, let's do this. And sometimes we tried playing the girl card, cause they're just like, I don't want to do that. Pitching out stuff, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to do that. Right. And it was like, but I'm a girl. And he was like, so you can still do it, And it's like,
well, I have three girls, get away with it. So I'm preparing for this
the job has to get done, right? So whoever's there, right?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So I am the only one that stayed on the farm. My younger sister did feed calves and stuff and help out and too. But my older sister and the middle sister. Well, I'm a middle sister. There's those numbers again.
Second middle sister.
Second middle sister. Yeah. They work they have town jobs. Town job.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Get off the farm and.
So they didn't want to keep doing the farm thing,
no.
but you did, and you stuck with it. So you were working for your dad.
Yes. Yeah. And so. So I was working for my dad, and it kind of was like I graduated from high school. I went and did YWAM in Australia. And so I lived there for 6 months, and then I came home, worked at Edeline Dairy in the store there, and then I went to Europe and did backpack through Europe, did 13 countries, and I think it was 2 or 3 months. It was exhausting. It was very cool, but I got home and I was like, I don't know if I ever want to leave. I don't know. It was so cool. I had such a I lived in Thailand for a little bit. It was so fun, but it was just I don't know. There was just no place like home, and just being rooted and being having something that you are working towards on your own farm. I don't know. It just I got it out of my system, and now I'm barely want to travel. I just love it here. So.
So you came back to the farm, and then started working for your dad.
Yeah, it was kind of they need someone to kind of, it was Dad was doing, I think he was doing all the herdsman stuff at that point, and then he was like, oh, you can come along, and I was kind of I was kind of in between me finding another job, right? I was oh, okay, I'll be here for a little bit, right? I'll just help out, and then he kind of stepped back and kept showing me. So I didn't have any training besides just working along Dad and doing along with him, and then he kept stepping back, stepping back and like, oh, you can do this. You can handle this. How about you figure this out? Right. And so, it was good.
So herdsman, what does that mean? What does a herdsman do on a dairy?
Yeah. So you're basically managing in charge of the animal health of your herd. So we had 520 cows, including the dry cows that weren't milking. We were milking like 470. And so, we had the whole pedometer system and everything where we could watch their activity. And so a lot of it was like on the computer and just kind of looking on, seeing milk levels and everything. I mean, if a cow is sick, her milk levels will go down. Her activity will go down. She won't walk around. She won't eat. So it was kind of like doing that. And then you go investigate like, okay, so what is wrong with you? Are you okay? Checking temperatures, checking just their overall health, and then working with the vet to do twice every month, or it's every other week, we would do herd health. And so we'd check pregnancies. If I had anybody I needed them to check, it was me and my mom would go out there with our vet and solve all the world's problems out there.
How many people get to have a doctor checkup every week?
I know.
Or every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. I know. Yeah. I didn't even have a doctor for like 5 years because, and finally, I got a little like a wrist injury, and I was like, oh, I should probably go to the doctor. And they're like, you don't actually go here. I was like, oh man, call my vet. What does he say? I have a better relationship with like a veterinarian. They got better help than I did. So, so I really enjoyed it. I really, I loved, making sure everyone was like at peak performance, and just, like making sure everyone was getting taken care of, that they were eating and drinking. And I don't know, it's just, I loved that managing of the herd, and, it was really good. But then I just knew when they started talking about, they had always talked about retiring, I think they've been talking about retiring for like 20 years. So it's like, they said, with this change coming with Dairygold, that they were going to, and I was like, yeah, right. They're not going to do it, and it was like within like 2 weeks they had made that decision. But
this was the change that Dairygold made on basically its quota within the co-op for different farms had certain amount of quota.
Yeah.
Right?
And then so someone had actually offered to buy their quota. And so it was like a good price. It was a good opportunity if they wanted to sell anyways, in the next couple of years. And so I was at peace with it though. Like when they did it, it wasn't like everyone's like, oh, do you get the rug pulled out from underneath you kind of thing? But we had worked so hard, and it was like with all the changes we had a really good crew for employees. Like we had a really good crew, but we had troubles with getting employees and
to find good people.
Yeah. And we were at a very good, we had a good thing going when we, and that was really hard. Actually, the only time I cried when we had the cows left and everything, and we were so busy that it just kind of happened that I was like, afterwards, I was like, oh, that was weird. So busy, like loading up and organizing and running numbers and making sure everyone was going where they needed to go. And actually the only time I broke down and I was like really upset was when we told the employees. It really hurt. I can still cry about it actually, because you build a relationship with these people, and you're out there working with them every day.
They're part of the family then, right?
They're part of what you're building, and they are such a huge part of it. And so it was hard. And there was one guy that, he didn't speak very much English. So we had actually somebody come in and translate, with us, so that so that we could really get across what we wanted to, say.
Because you don't want your employees to feel like, oh, okay, you're just dropping me after however many years. Yeah, no, we really wanted to understand why we had made this decision and why, And so we went through it with them, and it was a complicated, the whole base thing was very complicated. It wasn't. Yeah, it's hard to explain. I don't really even understand it fully, so I couldn't explain it to somebody else.
Right. So then you're trying to because we could communicate, decently on a lot of things, but this we wanted to make sure that they knew, So we had someone come in and it was so funny because afterwards I went and did their job well. They had that meeting in here, and so I had just seen the little bits of it, and then we had and then I went out, and so then the guy came out to take my spot that I was covering for him, and I was like, I was like ugly crying. Like, it was bad. I was just like, I couldn't get the words out. And he's like a sweet, like 50-year-old man. And he was like, it's okay. He goes, oh, it's okay. And I'm like, I am so sorry. And I was like, I love working with you and everything. And he's like, oh, it's okay for me, but not so much for you. I was like, well, wait, no, I mean, yeah, okay. It was just like such a funny, like little, like, oh, you know, he was concerned about me when I was like, I was so concerned about him, you know, and it was just, that was the, like, I had a big breakdown then.
Yeah,
but then, and then afterwards we all were like, okay, this is good. Like, this is, they all had, we had contacted local farms, and they had all, I think it was by the end of that week, we had jobs lined up for every single one of them. So
you helped arrange jobs for the employees.
That was very important to my dad, to have them set, you know, so that they're, you know, and then the farms that we had lined up with them, they were totally willing to cover, because we were in this weird spot where it's like, okay, we are going to be going out, but we will still have our cows for another month, you know? So it's like, they can't really give their 2 weeks notice because we still have all the work to do. Right. So it was just kind of this weird transition. And then, but the farms that we had lined up to, they were like, they totally understood, because they're like, yep, whenever they're ready to come over, you know, that's great. Send them, you know, so it worked out really good. Like, with the farming community was really good about it. So
was that that employee meeting that you talked about where you got so emotional?
Happened at this table.
Right here.
Yeah, here. Yep. We had lunch with them. Yep. We had lunch, and we had and it happened right here. Yeah.
How do you start that kind of conversation?
It was awkward because, like, we knew, and they were all like laughing and lighthearted and like just enjoying being together. You know, we were just, because we didn't really get together much, because, I mean, when you're milking 24 hours a day, someone's always out there. Yeah. So like, you didn't, you know, we had employee meetings, but it was always like a quick lunch or something. And then, you know, someone had to go out there and do this or that and stuff. But it was hard. It was like, because you knew, and then there's like a translator there. So then they're like, they knew something's big, you know, and I mean, but we really wanted to make sure that they knew right away before, you know, because, and then news travels fast around here. So we just didn't want them. Yeah. So we didn't want them to hear it from anybody but us that, you know, this is what we were doing.
So was that the moment when it hit you that this,
what hit me?
Well, maybe it hasn't hit you yet. Well,
No.
FYI, that dairy farm that you were working for closed up shop.
Oh, man. Okay. This is awkward. Are you here to tell me this? No. It didn't really hit me then either. I don't know. I knew that what we were doing and the pace that we were going wasn't sustainable. Like, it just, I mean, like, for my parents, like, mental health and everything, it wasn't, they were just going so full speed all the time. Right. And it was always like, they couldn't really get away. Anytime they did, we always had like some kind of issue here that it just kind of like ruined a vacation or whatever, you know. It was just so, and that's actually kind of the fear I have of continuing farming, you know, like is I know how invested you become in this, and it's like such an all-encompassing thing that I know that it's like, that's one of the things I'm like, okay, am I fully prepared to jump back into that, and how can I keep it so that I don't get to be burned out? And like, so where are the boundaries? Like, you know, boundaries.
That's a big thing, and a very hard thing for a lot of people. Yeah. But farmers in particular, like, when to say, okay, I'm off. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
when you live
are you
at
even
work,
able to? I mean, because you are fully responsible for, you know, these decisions. So unless you have somebody who you can say, you can make these decisions, like whatever the decision is. I mean, it's just like running any business, but it's just a lot. I think there's just more potential for things to go wrong. You know, there's more potential for, you know, if you have a sick animal and you're not here to make a decision on what to do with it, do you have somebody there that can make that decision?
So you have a family of your own now.
Yeah.
What do they think about all this?
So my husband's not a farmer. Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of a, and so I'm actually kind of like really blunt with him. Like, I'm like, this could really like be all encompassing. Like, this could be
take
like,
over my life.
Take over my life. Right. But I'm like, I can't let it. Right. I have to like work with it. Right. Like, I'm trying to figure out a way. And I mean, probably farmers are going to be like listening, like, good luck. We've been trying to do this for years. Right. Like, I'm trying to find a way to be fully involved but yet have the boundaries where, okay, so family always comes first, right? And where do you draw those lines? That is hard. I will probably end up hiring somebody I know I will have to hire somebody part-time too, because I know I won't be able to go at the level that I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just milk twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. Like, no problem.
It's a lot of milkings.
That's a lot of milkings, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because it even sounds great. Like, this, probably should admit this, but I actually never milked a full shift when we were a dairy. Like, I never milked.
Busted.
I know, exactly. Okay, we're coming clean. First time I've ever said this. Because I was so we did a lot of the field work too. So if there was any, I would jump in for just a little bit, and then because I couldn't do the full 8 hours with if we were harvesting, I was driving truck or I was mowing or something. So it was like I always wanted to. I always was like, oh, I could do this. But because I was like, oh, this is kind of enjoyable, but I just never, I couldn't do a full, because we had 8-hour shifts. So I could never commit to a full 8 hours because I was breeding cows twice a day. I was, doing all that stuff. So, you could have, but you'd have to make sure you were harvesting and everything. So we never wanted to put me on the schedule because you never knew what I was going to do that day.
Well, as long as you were doing something.
Yeah.
Well,
I was always doing something. Yeah, no, I was doing something. It just wasn't so I'm like, I'm going to be spending more time in the parlor than I ever have. So I was like, I know the gist of it, but it's like the full reality of it is so true confessions here with.
Yeah. So why do you do it?
Why do I do it?
Like you said, you grew up around it, so you're used to it. But then you were away for a little bit, and you came back and just felt like home. And even with feeling, so, stressed, I'm sure sometimes with all the things that, like you're saying, when it was a cow dairy, so busy all the time. Everybody's busy all the time. Your parents are tired and burned out from keeping up this crazy pace for years and years. And now you're still interested in continuing on that life.
It's crazy.
I'm not trying to dissuade you from it.
No,
but I'm trying to get at what drives you to keep doing it, because a lot of people be like, forget it.
Yeah. Well, so that's we're starting a vlog. I don't know if this is covered, but we're starting a YouTube vlog on our journey because it is kind of crazy. It's not.
How do you find it, by the way, just in case?
Oh, it's on
what's
YouTube.
It called?
Beanblossom Acres is our farm name.
Beanblossom Acres. Just search that.
Yep, it pops up. So so RTJ Farm is my parents' farm, and they still own all the land. They still own all the buildings. We are not going to be buying any of that at this point. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to, but we're just taking things one step at a time. So we're going to be renting from them a portion of the barn, because it's goat dairy doesn't need the big bar. Well, if you need that rotary is not going to fit. Yeah. Not yet, but
start saving your pennies for that multi-million-dollar investment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Stay tuned. It might be a while. So they, so RTJ Farm. So on Facebook, we're RTJ Farm and Beanblossom Acres, because I was managing the RTJ Farm page anyways. And so they have the land, the buildings, the crops, and they bought some beef, so that's theirs. So we're just the goat side of it. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be managing 2 Facebook pages trying to keep everything separate. So I'm like, we're just doing it all. It's kind of like a little mashup. I don't know, but yeah. So
works. Same place.
Yeah. So I know we talked about okay, should we continue the name, right? Yeah. Because that's kind of, I don't know, it has meaning. It's important for family farm, what the name is. It actually, RTJ stands for Ray Choker Jr., which is my grandpa. So it's Ray Choker Jr., and then my dad's the junior, and then I would be the junior. So it'd be Ray Choker Jr.'s Junior's farm. So we just kind of thought, well, now's a good chance to kind of we want to continue it, and we want to continue the family farm, but start something a little bit different.
Is that what drives you, is carrying on that legacy? Do you feel pressure?
I don't feel pressure. Actually, I almost feel like my parents are kind of thinking I'm a little nuts. They're very supportive, but they're just kind of okay.
It's not like somebody's got to continue on.
Oh, no. There's never been
in the family.
No. No, there's never been that pressure. And actually for a while there, they were so like, we're not going to allow anybody to, like, there was that time where they're just like,
we don't want you to go through this.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, this is nuts. Like, the milk prices were bottom, like, and it was like, oh, I just remember them being like, there's no way. And I remember being like, oh, what? But then, like as a kid, you're like, what?
Yeah, come on.
No fair. I want to farm.
And then you become an adult and you
and
learn
like,
about money.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this does suck. But I mean, I don't know. It's just a way of life. And I feel like if the opportunity wasn't there, like if the doors weren't opening, I don't know if I would be able to continue it, And so these doors are opening and I'm kind of like, on paper, I have a budget, which is not... It's my dad's thing. He's all about the numbers and he's really good at it. And I'm just like, oh, do I have to? It seems like homework, but you have to be really careful with your money because the margins are tight. You
got to make every dollar work really hard for you.
Right. And what's important in investing and what's not. Right. So like right now, all of our fencing, I would love to do a big fancy goat barn remodel. Like I have dreams, right. But I have a budget too. That's keeping me grounded. Exactly. So yeah, like portable fencing. It totally works and it keeps everything flexible. And so once I get in the swing of things, I can change things around. And then, if we continue and it's, continues to be a profitable venture, there's going to be more expansion in the future. As long as everything. But because I have this fear of seeing everything that has happened in the farming industry, I'm almost like scarred. Like I'm almost a little bit like jaded. I haven't even started yet, because you understand that it's like I've seen, my parents were successful and they did very well. But I saw how much work it took, and it was very encompassing. And like I said, my husband's very supportive and like maybe eventually he'll be able to join me.
He knew what it was like when you worked for your parents in that same world. So it's not like he's a stranger to how this whole farming life goes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so, we had those couple years where it was like, he just couldn't understand it. He was like, what is this? You're not getting paid for this
time? What?
Yeah, exactly. But
you have to go there now? Why?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is just a different lifestyle.
The cows are out. Doesn't matter if it's 2:30 in the morning. You gotta go.
Get your boots on. We're going. It's fine. The pajamas can get washed. It's fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
But yeah, it's a different why. That's kind of what my vlog is about. Like I'm trying to figure out why, right? Like I'm documenting like what we're doing and like the daily stuff that we do. And it's kind of been a weird journey because I'm like, well, what do I show? And like, I've been talking to my brother-in-law. He's been very supportive and he's like, because I watch YouTube videos all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are they doing? They're just living their life, right? And it's just like, why am I watching you do this?
At least that's what it feels like.
Yeah, right.
Even though they're still selectively only showing you certain things.
Right, exactly. Right? Yeah, well, some of the things I'm like, oh, I wouldn't show that. But
well, that's the false perception of like reality TV that our generation has now gotten so jaded on. We know, even though we still get sucked in by it quite often, we still know it's not real.
Yeah, like the Kardashians. Like
Facebook. Instagram.
Yeah.
Also, like people only take pictures of the nice things.
But
and it looks like their lives are wonderful.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think that's why YouTube's kind of taken off too.
Yeah.
I think because it is someone with a little camera and they're just going and doing these things and you're just like, the angles aren't all perfect. Yeah. You're just kind of shaky. Or it's, like we were watching somebody out of the Midwest work on this car that's been sitting in a field for 20 years. And we think it's hilarious because this guy's just funny. Like it's just him, his raw personality is funny.
Yeah. And it's authentic.
And it's authentic. And he's just sitting there and he's just making these little comments and you're just like, before you know it, it's been 30 minutes. We've been watching this guy under the hood of his car. And we're like, what? And, if you really think about it, you're like, why am I watching this? Like we follow some farmers too. And I'm like, I'll be done farming. And I'm like sitting there watching someone else farm. And I'm like, why am I, what is the drive behind this? Right. And it's just like, it's just real. Like, it's just like, oh, and everyone can do it so differently. Right. So like just the same as like dairy farming, cow dairy, you can, the goal is the same, to milk the cows, right? And to take care of the cows. But there's so many different ways you can do that. You can, there's 7 different bedding options you can have. Yeah. You can have so many different layouts. You can have robot milkers. You can have different, how many different parlor styles that they have, you know, and like, why do people think this was better or whatever? And I mean, it just, whatever works.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's why we're trying to keep everything so temporary, because we're like,
just have to see what works.
You know, because the different layouts and different, styles of, you know, doing the same thing kind of. So, yeah. So the YouTube is, basically just documenting. Yeah. And I mean, it's documenting what? My life, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. And like what the family farm really is what it really is trying to show, because it is hard to explain. And I cannot put my thumb on what it is, right? Like, what is it, right? that really just keeps driving me. Like, cause I should realistically go get a town job. Town job. Get my fancy flannel on for that one. I mean, like, that would make more sense. Like, realistically, if it's like just for the bottom line, if it's just to get a paycheck, and if it's get to benefits, especially now with all the benefits, you know, you can, that are like in law, you know, like, right. I mean, it would make more sense to actually just go and get a town job. But I feel so called, and I feel like this opportunity has come up that it's like, I got to give it a try, you know. My car's leaving. My car's leaving.
That's your car.
That's my car. Well, my sister's going to go pick up my kids.
Oh, there you go.
So
because I'm taking too long.
Yeah.
Here.
Hurry up. We got things to do. No, I'm just kidding. Trayson has to get to an appointment.
Thank you, sister.
I know. I was like that's why I was like texting. I'm like, hey, let me parent real quick. I got But
Let me parent real quick.
Hold on. Time out. We got to parent. But that's, I mean, but it flows. Everything like meshes together, right? So the farm and parenting and everything has to, like, it's not separate. Like, you can't, same with like the balancing. I don't think I said that right. I think trying to find balance doesn't mean like, okay, I'm leaving, don't bother me with farm stuff anymore. It's like, how do we do this all together, right? How do we spend time as a family and, you know, work together and do these jobs, but still have time where it's like off the farm, you know, like just family time. Yeah. My parents always did a really good job. Like, I remember when we were a kid and we would go like water skiing after chores and stuff. And I'm like, how did you have the energy? And they're like, I don't know. You just did it. Right. Yeah. But just taking that time and doing things so that it's not just all farming. I mean, there's a lot of fun in farming, and there's a lot of hard work in farming. Yeah, and totally. I mean, you can find fun in hard work if your attitude's right. You can find fun in anything. Yeah.
Do you miss the cow dairy busyness as much as that's stressful and tiring? I also know there's a certain part of that you get used to, and now this place here is not as busy as it was. There aren't the people around. It's been nice. Rigs coming on. Yeah.
It's actually been nice. I think we were such at max capacity that like it wasn't enjoyable at as much as it should be, right? Yeah. And I get that it's a job, so it's like not everything has to be enjoyable. But like, I couldn't have my kids out there because there was so much going on. There was people driving tractors. There was so much traffic. I couldn't even have my kids out there because it wasn't safe. You know, and I couldn't keep, and now, for kids, for the kids to be out there, it wasn't safe because I didn't know who was driving what tractor. There was maybe 2 or 3 people out there driving tractors at different times, you know, and I didn't know if they were watching for my kids, right? And I mean, it was chaotic. It was just busy. And now someone drives, I mean, it used to be like, how many people, like 6 to 7 people drive up on the yard every day, right? And you're just like, usually it's like, oh no, what do they want? Like, what do they, you know? Yeah. And now it's like someone drives up and you're like, oh,
hey,
neighbor, or like a human, especially with COVID, you know, you're like, right. Who is it? What do they want? I mean, it was so chaotic. It was not sustainable to continue that way. I mean, it was.
What was the hardest time?
It was usually when we were trying to harvest, and then but we had during the off season when we weren't harvesting or putting, manure out or doing the field work, we still kept busy I was still busy with the cow management and everything. It was slower during that time. So that was kind of the downtime. You still worked several hours a day, but it wasn't as chaotic. And then when you got to harvesting, you were doing these things, you're out in the tractor, and then you're like, okay, I got to get off and do an hour worth of cows work, with the cow. So it was so kind of, it was just like always kind of frantic, right? Yeah. Like it was a little bit like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and, so that's it. It just got to be too much. It was just, and so like when the cows left, it was almost just like, and so we've taken this year to really think about, and like I've taken so many times I wake up in the morning, I'm like, okay, so if I have a goat dairy, I have to go and do this right now. And or like if I'm out, like, okay, kids sports or whatever, okay, this is the time that I'm going to have to go home and milk. And at what time do I'm like constantly
trying to get it ingrained
in my head, right? That I'm not like, so I'm like prepared for it because I know that it is, it's coming. It's coming. But dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I know exactly. But we're trying to make everything that we're doing very efficient though. So that way it's, for like feeding, so that we have it set up. So if you go in there with food with those goats, they will attack you. They love some food. But I'm just trying to get it so that efficiently, I'm trying to spend time out there, but I'm trying to make sure I get everything else done with the kids and with school and everything. I don't want them to suffer, I'm
still being present.
Yeah, still being present. And my parents always did such a good job of it. Like they handled it really well. Like I'm saying that they were chaotic and because they like for their mental health, the farm was, but it was so many different stresses but they always were at anything that we were involved in. I was in 4-H with horses, and they were like trailering me and my horse back to the fairgrounds, and they were always there. And it just is important to continue, like putting family first, But finding that balance is. I think everybody struggles with that, even if you have a town job. Secret's out. You try to balance. It's hard. It's hard. Totally. And on the farm, you can have your kids with you. You can, as long as everything, make sure everyone's safe. Because there are a lot of things, especially with the cows, big animals. Yeah. You got to make sure that, they're not like, oh, I'm in with the cows because I go in here with mom. Well, they can't go in by themselves, Yep. They can with the goats because they're just going to get licked and
the goats aren't going to butt them and knock them over. And
not any of the ones that we have. I've definitely have. I know they could. Yeah. And like we have some bucks and they say, bucks are just like bulls. They can be aggressive. The ones that we have, I've made sure I've definitely like watched, like I'm like, he goes in there and I'm just like watching everybody. I'm like, if anyone, you watch yourselves, you make one wrong move. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm put you in a different pen or something. But, so, I don't know where we went from this. This is a rabbit trail. My mind's always like rabbit trails, like
not goat trails.
Yeah. It is. It's always like my friend always joked about like the rabbit trails. She'd be like, okay, now circle back to the first point we were at 30 minutes ago. What was that?
What is it that, having been a dairy farmer most of your life, first cows, and now you're going to be a goat dairy farmer. Yes. What is it that people don't seem to understand, or what you wish people who aren't in this world knew about this dairy world that you have lived in and still live in?
Okay. Good question. Let's see. One of the things I wish people knew is that one of the things that drive me absolutely nuts is that people say you don't care about animals because you have a lot of them. And so that thing, like the animal welfare stuff, really bothers me because it's just nonsense. There are a few bad apples. Yes, there are people who are out there, in any industry that you go into. Yeah. There is always, there's bad doctors, there's bad dentists, there's bad, all kinds of different professions. You can have someone that's not a good team player.
Yeah, but some of those people say, like, even what you're doing when you're caring for your cows is still not letting them live their best life or something.
Right. Yes.
What do you say to that? It's like, well, you shouldn't be taking milk from any cows, even if you're treating them well.
Right. We can go back to how they had better vet care than I had better. I mean, we put them, like, especially, well, speaking of putting family first, is that trying to balance it with the animal's needs, right? Yeah. So sometimes the animal's needs come before your own family's needs. And then that's where the balance has to happen, right? Where it's like, these guys need to be fed and scraped and cleaned and taken care of. And if there's an animal that's sick and we are heading off to go do something, that animal needs care. Like you have to, you can't just be like, well, sorry, animal, I got dinner plans. It's like, okay, we're going to do as much as we can. And yeah, you can go to dinner, but you might have to change your shirt because put your fancy flannel back on.
It'll smell funny when you get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, or like a calving. Like there was lots of times where it was like end of the day and it was like you walk by the calving pens, the last thing you do. And you always kind of was like, oh, what's in there? Like, is everyone okay? But if anyone has any problems calving, you're jumping in there and you're helping, and it's like, oh man, I'm going to be a little late for this or that because you just can't just be like, okay, well, clock out, good luck, You are responsible for these animals, and we take that serious. Yeah. So we take that very serious of their well-being. One of the most frustrating things about farming is trying to figure out, like, if there's some kind of issue. You're trying to figure out, like if it's like when we had the farm, the cow dairy, and like there was a couple cows that were sick, and if you had some kind of feed issue or something, trying to pinpoint, and you're fully invested in it. You're trying to pinpoint what's going on, and it's not just, well, this is unfortunate. It's like a big deal. Like you're trying to figure out what is going on. So I don't know if that made sense, but
well, there's a lot to it. Yeah. And that's maybe another part that people don't understand is just to keep a dairy, like you guys had with the cows, keep that going takes your entire life and so much energy. Yeah. And that's really the only way you can make it work too. It's not like you can sit back and just pay someone to do all the work. You aren't going to make you're going to lose money doing that. So you have to do a lot of it yourself economically, right? Yes. Well,
and even if you have somebody that you have hired to help, you have to make sure you have to put the training time into them. Even if they come from a different farm, whatever, it's your responsibility to make sure that person knows as much as they say they know. I mean, there's that trust too, that they're like capable of doing it, but it's for your animals. You're putting them in charge of your animals, or if you're having them, it's not just, if they mess up this, I mean, it's like a big deal. So, I mean, there's a responsibility in even hiring just to make sure that you go alongside of them until you are fully like confident that these people care about your animals, like that, as you want them to be treated too. Right. So it's not as easy as like, I hired somebody to work the cash register or whatever, which I mean is their business too. So, I mean, that's income that's not saying that that's easy either, but it's a little bit more complicated when it's animals and they act differently or whatever. And you have to make sure that someone's, able to pinpoint if they're not doing well, or if, cause then basically it comes back on you, on your, it's still your responsibility, it's still your animal. And so, we don't just use them as tools, they're not like just, we have them out there and we just milk them until they drop, no, that's not true. That's not, I mean, we make sure that they're comfortable, because if they're not, they're not going to produce milk. And then you're not getting the money, and then you can't care for them. And then,
you're going out of business.
And then you're going out of business. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a cycle that I think, I'm not, and if I was trying to figure out what I want people to know about this, I think a lot of people I think most people appreciate farmers, and, and a lot of people, maybe their grandparents were farmers, or actually most of it's like my great grandpa, there's a lot of disconnect between, how many generations passed, right? It used to be that there was so many farms in the area and so many people who, had ties to family farms, or like, my uncle, we'd go during the summer and we'd go, and then now it's like, maybe my friend in school had a uncle who farmed, like it's just, and so that's kind of part of the vlog journey too, is just to kind of show like, hey, we're normal people. We're not like out there with, well, actually I am out there with overalls and a pitchfork. So, okay, well, I am stereotypical. So. But I mean, we are just like, we're moms, we're dads, we're not those board books, that you see these like the farms and they have like the nice, this is just, and that's great, but this is what farming looks like. And this is how, it is a lot of hard work and it's a lot of ups and downs, and
you go through stuff too.
I mean, we're living our lives and then farming along. So I don't know. I don't really know what I would want. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
good question.
Yeah, I'm full of them.
Yeah. Well,
I'm pumped to see what happens with this goat dairy, since that doesn't happen a lot around here.
Yeah.
And you could kind of bring a new twist to it.
Yeah.
And bring some of your cow dairy knowledge to the goat dairy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of similarities. There is. There's a lot of, it's a different animal, but there's a lot of similarities with managing styles too. Like a lot of the things I'm researching, I'm like, oh, hey, we did that with the cows. Oh, hey, we did that with the cows, but a little different, right? Yeah. So it is a little bit of a new twist, and I am trying to learn to, like, I'm trying to train my brain to be like, I mean, because a cow will give like 10 gallons a day. Mm-hmm. And a goat will give like 1 to 2 gallons a day. Yeah. So like even the storage of like the milk, trying to figure out, okay, so if we have X amount of goats and we're milking 2 times a day, how much milk storage do we need? Well, they're the same as cows, that they peak, right? Like, so when they first have their baby, they like have to ramp up, like they have like a curve where they're like working up to a certain level, and then they kind of stay at that level, and then they drop down once they're like, when they're bred again, and then they're ready to have their next baby. And then you give them it's same with the cows. You give them a 2-month vacation where they just kind of lay around and eat and be happy. And so they get like a maternity leave, and stuff. So, so it's trying to figure out numbers too. Yeah. So it's like, so cow numbers. And I spent so much time obsessing over milk weights for cows, right? So if one dropped down like a little bit, I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's going on?
Must be
Are you okay? Yeah. Like, I mean, are you eating okay? You go out there and you're like, you look fine. Are you okay? Like, but you base so much on that. And it was like maybe a couple pounds, or, like 10 pounds or whatever. It would be like a big, and so now it's like, that would be like a whole milking for like a whole day's worth of. So like, I mean, there's just it's a different volume, I guess. And so, and the animal size, I mean, what they eat, goats eat way less because they're a way smaller animal. And, So.
Well, it's great that you're keeping goat milk production local. Because like you said, Grace Harbor was getting this goat milk from this farm. You're basically continuing on that farm.
Yeah. Yep.
Otherwise, that could have gone away. Mm-hmm. And if people wanted local goat milk, they would have had fewer options. I don't know how many other options there are, how many people right around here are even doing it. Like you're saying, there's other places, but
in
local
the county,
is great too, right?
Well, and a lot of you look in the stores. When I was first researching, I was like looking in the stores, and I'm like, where's this from? California. Where's this from? California. There's actually quite a bit shipped up from California. So Grace Harbor does a great job of, producing a local product. And so I'm very excited, but yet they didn't have enough to keep it on the shelves, and so they didn't have enough being produced to fill their orders. So
there's demand for it.
There's demand for it. I'm hoping there's enough.
Well, that's good because, like you said, it may have certain health benefits for people.
Yeah.
People may have different ideas about it, about why they like it. Yeah. So you're going to provide that option.
Yeah.
For them.
So I mean, it's exciting to kind of have something that's like, I mean, with cow milk, it was like you were part of a big company, and I mean that was good, but it kind of
it was a cooperative,
right? Yeah. So you're part of the cooperative with the other dairies, right? So you kind of feel like this, like kind of you're like, we're all in this together, and stuff. So I was kind of like, how do you? I wasn't really like, I was looking into different things to do, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to like produce my own thing, right? Like I was like, I don't want it to be,
won't be in it with anybody else.
Well, so I didn't know if I wanted to be like processing anything, or because that's a whole different side of it too. And they do such a good job of doing it. I just didn't want to start something and then start like all these new things. I wasn't,
Like,
so
what do you do with the milk? Yeah. So it's great that David will.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he loves that part of it. And we were talking about it and I was like, I don't really want to process anything. Cause I like, that's all above my head. Right. Like, I mean, all the steps of that too. Right. And so I was saying that and he was like, well, perfect. I enjoy doing that. I was like, perfect. So I think we'll make a good team. So awesome. I think it's going to be good and yeah, whatever. I mean, hopefully in the future we can expand, and if that's what we want to do, and then maybe get some goat cheese or somebody who's interested in doing something like that. So I would love to partner with somebody who'd love to, make goat cheese. And I'm just not sure if I want to be the one making goat cheese, because I'm not really good at, well, it wouldn't be baking. I'm not good at I'm like not good at cooking or baking or following recipes or measuring. I feel like it'd be very inconsistent.
So the farm name is Beanblossom Acres.
Yep.
And you're on Facebook?
We're on Facebook as RTJ Farm and Beanblossom Acres.
What about Instagram? Are you there?
We are, and that's just Beanblossom Acres, just to make everything very confusing.
Any other platforms? Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok?
No. Oh no.
Come on, you should do it.
I do love Instagram.
And
I love
YouTube.
I love adding, and you can do it on Facebook too, but I'm not very tech savvy. So this is like kind of a whole different ballgame, like doing the YouTube vlog. I've already deleted 2 of my videos, and it was like, the whole point is to have like views on YouTube. And I like totally squashed that right away. I was
like you inadvertently deleted them?
On accident.
Oh boy.
Yeah, like on accident. And I was like devastated, because I was like, oh no, where did it go? It was like gone. And because it was like showing that it was like loading. And I thought, okay, it showed that it was loaded, and then it was showing it was loading. So I was like, oh, I must have done it twice, because our service isn't very good. So I was like, I must have pushed it twice. So I pushed delete, because I thought, well, that must be the second one, right? Yeah. So then all of a sudden, poof, there goes the bottom one, gone. And then that was the number 1. And I had it was such momentum. And I was like, man, I'm really bad at this.
Been there, done that.
But did you do it the next week too? That was the problem.
I've done, yeah.
Okay, well, I feel better now, because it was like, I'm never doing this again. I learned my lesson. And then maybe it was 2 weeks later. And I was like, oh, I've done it again. Like, how could this even happen? I don't even know how I'm so bad at this. But it's fun. It's well, that's not fun, but it's fun to share on social media, the family farm. And I feel like that speaks louder than just the pictures, the videos, I'm even post. I'm not really good at saying, I do a lot of run-on sentences. So it's always just I should have a period in there somewhere. I'm not good at that. Grammar, I guess. I don't know what that means. Grammar, editing. I don't know. So the videos, I find the vlogs are really fun, because I can get across, and then I cut out when I rabbit trail, and then I put that at the end, so it looks like I didn't just have that in the middle of the thing. So look, here's my thoughts. It's all
you're giving away
flows.
The secrets here.
Yeah. It flows all well,
So the YouTube channel is Beanblossom Acres.
Yep.
On YouTube, very simply.
Very simply, yeah. Beanblossom Acres. Yep. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your story with us.
Anytime.
Telling us all the inside.
I know. I feel
scoop.
I covered. I know. I God.
All the secrets. Yeah. So, but we may have to check back in, since this whole thing is just kind of at the very beginning. Really.
Yes, definitely.
I'm pumped to see what you do.
Who knows? I'll be making cheese and
hey,
learning how to measure. I don't know.
We'll have to come over here and talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. You're always welcome. Thank you for having me.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. These are the stories of the people who grow your food.